I don't know about you, but the solos that I take where I leave feeling satisfied and happy with them are the ones where I start out with some ideas, I build on those ideas, I develop them, I climax the ideas, and then I hand off the baton to the next musician to improvise. And the solos that I feel unsatisfied with, disappointed with, are the ones where I just start playing as many notes as possible, getting as many ideas out there onto the table, not really considering the development of the solo. Well, that's what Aimee Nolte calls one of the biggest mistakes that she sees jazz musicians do when they're improvising. So on the show today, I have special guest Aimee Nolte to lay it down for us, to tell us how we can develop awesome jazz solos. Let's do this thing.
Welcome to the LJS podcast, where you get weekly jazz tips, interviews, stories, and advice for becoming a better jazz musician. And now your host. He's a jazz musician, author, and entrepreneur, Brent Vaartstra.
What's up, everybody? Brent here from LearnJazzStandards.com, which is a blog, a podcast, and videos all geared towards helping you become a better jazz musician. So excited you are here. And like I said, I have special guest back on the show, Aimee Nolte. She is a jazz pianist. She is a singer, and she is a YouTuber. She has an incredible YouTube channel. Many of you might be familiar with her already, and we had her back on the show, episode 60. So almost 2 years ago, basically, 100 episodes later. Really excited to have her back on to talk about this concept of developing a jazz solo. And she gave some great examples. She really walks us through the process. It was really a pleasure talking to her. You're going to get a lot of value out of today's episode. Now make sure you stick around to the end because we're actually going to talk about Aimee's new album. Oh, it's going to be great. So make sure you stick to the end. She's going to tell you all about it. Now, I was so excited to have Aimee on the show, not only, of course, because she's a great musician and all that other stuff, because I was just excited to show her that I had developed my perfect pitch note, which is something that she talked about in episode 60, which is basically where you take a song that you know, and because you know that song so well, you basically memorize a note in that song. Mine was G, and I was so excited to show Aimee that I could do it, and so I was even so confident that I did it on the podcast. And of course, I failed. I sang a half step up. I sang a G sharp instead. But you know what? That's okay too, right? That's okay. It looks like I have some more work to do on my perfect pitch note. But hey, enough of me feeling sorry for myself. Enough of me lamenting what could have been. Let's get on Aimee Nolte to lay it down for us. Let's do this. All right, so I'm pretty excited to have on the show today, again, as a repeat guest, Aimee Nolte, who's a YouTuber, who is a jazz pianist, a vocalist. Really excited to have you back on, Aimee.
Thanks, Brent. I'm excited to be on.
So the funny thing is I was looking back and seeing that actually you were on episode 60. Was the last time you were on. We were talking about how to develop relative pitch. And actually, hold on a second. You taught me how to figure out what my relative pitch note is. So tell me if I'm right. Is this a G?
You're so close.
No, I didn't get it right. No.
You got a song. What's your jam? What's your perfect pitch jam?
My perfect pitch jam is My Shining Hour.
So this will be. You were trying to hear that one.
Yeah.
Well, it was darn close. It's not foolproof.
It's not foolproof.
No.
All right. Well, that didn't turn out very well.
It's just an idea.
But it was a great idea, and it's actually worked for me many times. So I do thank you for that. That was a great episode, and I can't believe it because it's been 100 episodes since. This is episode 162. So welcome back.
Wow! Congratulations to you.
Oh, thank you.
Yeah.
And so for those who maybe don't know who you are, although I know that many people probably do, why don't you just give a little quick bio about who you are and what you do, what you're all about?
Sure. I grew up in Northern California, and then I got into jazz when I was in my teens, started studying piano, learning everything I could about jazz piano, and then I decided to study in college. So I went to Brigham Young University in Provo, Utah, and got my jazz piano degree, moved to New York City for a couple of years with my husband, and got to play around the city. I actually did a lot of transcribing while I lived in New York. I transcribed a lot of Bill Evans music, trying to make some money for people that wanted transcriptions. And then we moved to Los Angeles in 2001. And ever since, I've just been I've released a couple of albums. I've been gigging around town and trying to be a better player.
Nice. Excellent. And you have a great YouTube channel. And yeah, it's a great YouTube channel. One of my favorite YouTubers, by the way. So thanks for all the great content that you are creating for people, helping people learn more about music, learn about jazz music, how to become better jazz improvisers, all this stuff. So important. So thank you for your contributions there. So I want to ask you a question, Aimee. This is a big question. What is the biggest mistake that gets made in jazz improvisation that you notice from your students?
That's a really good question. Maybe the best way to answer it is to demonstrate. So if I ask somebody, they'll tell me about themselves a little bit, and then I say, well, why don't you play a little something for me? Take maybe play a couple choruses of Just Friends, and they'll say, oh, okay, and then like this is what I always hear. Something like that. They just they hop in and I feel like it's the top of their second or third chorus when really they've just started playing for me. I've just met them and it's like they're telling me everything they know just right away. That's the biggest mistake I see.
Right. Now, what's the problem with that? Like, what's the problem with just coming out with your guns blazing and, just playing a bunch of cool bebop lines or whatever you're just playing?
Yeah. Well, I mean, imagine it like maybe you're just meeting somebody and you're going out to lunch with them or something. And it would be like, instead of having them ask you a question about yourself or where did you grow up? Or maybe you ask them, if instead of answering that question, they start explaining the Pythagorean theorem to you. Or just like out of the blue, like it was nowhere, and all of a sudden here it is. That's what it's like to me.
Right. Okay. So it's just a bunch of stuff. It's hard to
rambling. It has no context.
Right. So that's interesting you say that. So like, what I feel like, so this is kind of my opinion. So tell me what you think about this. When I think about what a good jazz solo is, or any solo, forget about jazz, improvisation in general, someone who creates a great musical idea or even a melody, it's something that develops. I think that's what you're going to get at with me here, right?
Yeah, absolutely.
So something that, so when we start a solo, and maybe this is something I hear from some of my students in my 30 Steps to Better Jazz playing course. They're recording themselves improvising, and I do hear sort of exactly what you just played. And it feels like, I want to get all my great ideas out right now because they've been practicing, licks in all 12 keys.
Absolutely.
They've been learning solos.
Totally right.
They've been doing. So you want to get all that stuff out because, I mean, it's exciting, right? Or especially if it's a social situation like a gig or a jam session, it's sort of like, there's the social pressure. Maybe who's listening? Maybe I want to impress them. So you play a bunch of stuff, but a great solo to me develops into something. Is that something that you would agree with, or what's your thoughts on that?
Perfect. Yeah, I think a great solo has a development, much like a great story.
Yeah, fantastic.
With a beginning, a middle, and an end. No, one thing to note is that and after I made this video, people made comments like, well, they said plenty of solos that are like my favorite solos to listen to by my jazz heroes. They're just blowing. And I said, yeah, that's right. There's a place, a time and a place to blow. And one of those times and places is maybe you're a horn player in a big band and all you've got is 18 bars and all you've got is 8 bars or 16 bars. Like, that's the time to show your stuff. And, up-tempo tune, that's all you've got. You've only got that much time. And then the next person's got 8 bars. Like, that's a time where you can totally blow. Or, sometimes the vibe is just blow. Like, maybe you're at a jam session and everybody's playing Cherokee and they're only taking 1 or 2 choruses. And I don't know. Sometimes, absolutely, you can hear in your mind right now, Bird hopping into rhythm changes and just starting out with some, like some amazing lick. Sometimes it's okay, but I think, it's forgotten and needs to be. I need to remind people that development is, it's integral to creating something beautiful.
Sure, and I'd even argue a little bit that, if you hear a Charlie Parker solo, there's a lot of development in it. Just because it's a lot of notes, doesn't mean that it's not being developed and it's not being shaped in a masterful way. So let me ask you this question. So someone who's listening right now and's like, okay, Aimee, I mean, I get what you're saying, develop the solo, but how does that start? So maybe someone who's more of a beginner might literally ask the question, well, how many notes should I play? Like, how do I develop a solo, right? Like, what does that look like? Could you maybe explain that a little bit better?
Yeah, some people do learn that way too. Like you're right, they might actually ask that note, or they might actually ask that question, how many notes should I play?
Right.
It seems like if they're that kind of a thinker, then I'll actually give them an answer to that question. Like, well, maybe the answer is 3. And I'll say, so I'm going to play this chord right now. And I'd like you to sing to me the first 3 notes that come to your mind. And maybe they do, do, do. And I'll say, yeah, those are great. I love those. All right. So there we go. We've got two bars of C major. Let's do something with those 3 notes. Do, do, do. Here comes the next bar. Now 3 more notes. Maybe change it slightly. Do, do, do. Yeah, that's a good answer. Like, you can start as simply as that, just giving them a number of notes, having them sing whatever comes to their mind, or whistle if they don't feel comfortable singing, or actually playing. But I do like to ask them to step away from their instrument and actually hear something first.
Right.
And maybe, if they're not that type of a learner and they just say, all right, well, how do I come up with an idea? I'll say, anytime you just play a chord for somebody, it's crazy the ideas that they come up with. They might just come up with an absolutely beautiful idea. Da da do 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 do. I'll play on the next chord and I'll say, all right, skew what you just did to match this. Da do 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 do. Right? Like, they do it more often than not, and that's a beautiful beginning.
That's fantastic. So it's interesting. My friend Jeff Schneider was on the show some episodes ago, and he talked a little bit about this sort of idea too, along the lines of taking a short little phrase and manipulating it. I think we came down to, like, there's 3 different ways, or 3 different ways at least we talked about doing it. So taking a short little phrase, short little line, and then manipulating it just a little bit the second time you play it. Maybe you add a different note on the top end. And then there's the taking the same idea and translating it to a different chord quality. So if it's a major 7th chord, like in the case of Just Friends, major 7th, and it goes to a minor 7th, translating that over the next chord.
Yeah.
Some different ideas like that to start developing those ideas. Okay, so sounds like just taking a simple idea, and you're saying being able to hear it first. So you're advocating really for someone who's really trying to start from scratch here, just simply sitting back for a second and trying to sing. Is that what you're suggesting?
Yeah, and taking it slow also. Sometimes, people might put on a play-along track to try to come up with their best ideas, but just playing an arpeggiated rubato kind of chord and listening to it for a second, I think has way more value at this step in the creation. So actually just, letting it soak in. How does that C major chord sound? And don't sing anything until something comes. And I mean, people are also afraid to take a rest. And that's something that I see. And you can liken that to conversation as well. If you're talking to somebody who never comes up for air, it's exhausting, right? You're just waiting for a chance to interject or share something you have to say. Like, but if they never stop, like, the thing that you think about that person is that they're nervous. And that's how it is for me. If I listen to a player who never comes up for air, if you hear somebody who's confident enough to they let that whole first bar go by without doing anything. Maybe because absolutely nothing came to them yet. I'm going to respect that person. I'll be like, gosh, they didn't play a note till they knew what they were going to play.
Yep. Yeah. Sure. Absolutely. Yeah. I love that. I love that idea of, and I think that's where it comes to. I was on a guest on another podcast. We were talking more about. how to in a gig situation, like what your role is, what you should be doing. And one thing that I was mentioning is that first and foremost, before it comes to yourself, it comes to serving the music, right? And what does the music need? And I think I was more talking about it in that context of, not focusing on just what you're playing, but focusing on what everybody else is playing. However, I think it's the same thing for, even if it's the attention is on you, when you're improvising a solo, I think it is still about, serving the music first. What does the musical idea need? And also, what are other people playing as well? Because maybe that might feed into your ideas too. I think it's so easy for us to get locked into that zone of just playing and playing notes and not coming up for air. But oftentimes, the music does need space, right? It does need some breathing room.
Yeah, that's nice. I like to think about it in those terms, and I don't think I've ever phrased it quite that way. What does the music need? But I do think in the video that we're talking about, that I discussed these ideas, I think I called it "How Pros Start Their Solos." The meat of the video is when I tell you that sometimes the idea that you're searching for feels like once you find it, it feels like it already existed, like it was already something that was supposed to be, and it's almost like you're not creating it, but you're trying to find it. So I think it's really important to ask yourself in those spaces where you're not playing, what should come next? What's the beautiful thing or the true thing that should come next? Like the thing that's going to make everything feel all right. And you can't always find it, but there are moments when you do find it. And too, that there are moments in music that you love where the true beautiful thing is absolutely the thing that came out of the horn. You think about,
Yep.
right? Let me do that again. Right? What's going to come next? All of that just feels as natural as can be.
Yeah. It's so funny. I was about to ask you, what are some artists that you would recommend that really have this sort of musical development and space philosophy? That's such a great one. I always suggest Miles Davis's Freddie Freeloader solo for that reason in my courses. Yeah. That's another great one. The So What solo is a great one. Miles Davis is just really good for understanding this exact concept you're talking about. Are there other artists that you would suggest that to really listen to that that really embody this to you?
Have you ever played a song and it's been your turn to solo, and when you solo, the solo of one of your favorite recordings comes into your head, and you find it hard not to tap into that?
Yeah, especially if I was listening to a certain person a lot before I was going to a gig or something like that. Yeah, for sure. The essence of that person will will come down. Yes.
Those, I think those are the solos that's they stay with us, because you can't even hear the song without, when it comes time to take a solo and the head, the top of the changes come back around, you've got this solo from somebody else singing in your ear. And I mean, I think Chet Baker was a great example of that. Especially the solos that he took once his chops were beginning to fade, because I think he thought extra hard about what to do. I think for me, Kenny Barron chooses notes that are so meaningful. I love the album that he played with Stan Getz, the duets.
Oh yeah. That's
a lot of times those phrases come out in what I do. So I think that's kind of important to ask yourself, when, I don't know how to put it, but when you're playing those songs, if somebody else's solo jumps out at you that, maybe they're the greatest influence on you.
Right. Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, that's a great album. Was it called People Time? Stan Getz and Kenny Barron. Is that the one you're referring to?
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah, and Stan Getz, also a great example. Well, really all the great jazz musicians are great examples of this, but some of them are like more so like there lots of space, lots of melodic lines that develop so like perfectly, right? I guess more of the less bebop people. But again, like I said, you could also argue that Charlie Parker and Dizzy, all these people, like their lines are really nicely developed and flowing as well. It's just more notes, right?
Well, yeah, and you think of the way that John Coltrane hopped into Giant Steps.
Right.
Like, there wasn't a ton of, space. That was a time where he had something to say and he was going to say it. But it's beautifully developed, even though it starts without a lot of space. It just, it goes in the direction he wanted it to go. And that, to me, that's just as singable as the So What solo, if you've heard it enough.
So how do we think about developing a solo, right? Because we start with, we're talking about some of these start sparse and creating these ideas that flow together, but every solo needs to go somewhere, right? So how do we do that? I know it seems like a question it's hard to put into words, but how do we do that? Like, how do we actually build a solo?
Yeah, good question. And I like that you talked about composing too as a means to being a better improviser. Sometimes I think if you keep your audience in mind, it can help you to create a better arc. So like maybe if we take the song There Will Never Be Another You, and if you start with some idea, right? Something like that. The audience can tell that you've taken the first idea and that you've kind of done it again. And they might say to themselves, oh, she kind of took the first idea and did it. I wonder if she's going to do it again. And then if you do it again, they feel smart.
Yeah.
It's like
Wow.
you've let them kind of predict something and it makes them feel good. And then they might wonder, oh, I wonder if she's going to do it again. And then you don't. That's how you kind of keep an audience with you and interested in what you're doing. So if you can sometimes make them feel smart and sometimes fool the heck out of them, I think that can be a fun way to actually compose in the moment. But, if we're talking about not composing in the moment and just composing on your own to try to build your story, I do think that's a good idea is to take one idea. Da 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 da. Can you hear what comes next, Brent?
Well, I can hear my own line in there.
Yeah, what do you hear? I like it.
Something that goes down.
Something like that. Yeah, that's great. And then this might be the spot to change. And like as you, especially if we're kind of up tempo like this, you can have an arc of thought. You can think idea leaves space, maybe bigger eighth note idea. All right, maybe leave a little space. All right, more eighth notes. Let's play some more eighth notes. What do I hear here? Oh, maybe I hear a kind of bebop line that has some triplets. Put that in. You can actually be, just as if you were composing. You can suggest ideas to yourself and try them out. I do that sometimes. I'll say, I know I'm going to take 3 choruses on this song. By the time I get to the 3rd chorus, I want to be having ideas, polyrhythmic ideas, for instance. You can set an arc like that, but how am I going to come out of my polyrhythms to end up and end my solo? Maybe I'll take one of the ideas that I was playing. By the time it comes out, maybe it's maybe you slow it down and you end up like that, and so that you're maybe I don't know. There's just all kinds of
Well, it's a ways to develop tension in it, right? Because sort of what you're describing right now is like the climax, right? It's sort of like you're developing it and you're developing these ideas, and eventually you want to get to some place where we want to make I love how you said make the audience feel smart. I like that a lot, actually. Make the audience feel smart, but then like you said, you want us to surprise them too. So at some point there's got to be a little twist, right? And then there's got to be something else, and there's got to be, and maybe the way to add tension is play more notes. Maybe it's not. Maybe it's like you said, just rhythmically to change things up. Maybe depending on what instrument. Say that again.
Maybe it could be with volume.
Could be out of
nowhere you get quiet. Yeah, it's like
right dynamics. It could be depending on your instrument you play. Like every instrument has their own ways of adding more. Like piano players, play more block chords, or there's a lot of different techniques you can use. It depends on what instrument you play.
Yeah.
But I think the main concept here is building there, like going someplace rather than just playing for the sake of playing.
Yeah, that's great. Good. I like too that you said there are twists, and that's also kind of like if you're watching a movie or something, and there's a great plot twist that captures you. That's cool. I like twists and turns. Yeah.
Great. So let's give something actionable for the audience today. What's something that you want them to practice this week in regards to what we're talking about today?
Let's see. I think I'd like them to practice the first thing that we talked about, which is taking the beginning chord of whatever you're working on, playing it slowly, listening for whatever might be out there in the universe that wants to come out of them right then. Maybe it could be that you take, maybe it could be that you take all the things you are, right? You can sit with these changes for a second. Whatever song you're playing, play yourself the changes over the first 8 bars. Right? Then go back and listen to them again. And you listen to that beautiful C minor chord. Wait until something comes out, Hear the next chord. Da 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 do dee. Da boo do do be. Da diddle da. Let that sit with you for a second. See how it sounds, and then go back and do it again. Boo do 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 do. Do 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 do. Do 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 do. Maybe record yourself, and
I like that.
When you come up with your best idea after maybe trying it like 4 times, that might be something to hold on to. And I would even recommend to actually write out a solo. I tend to know if I'm at the point in my practicing where it would be helpful to me to write out a solo or not. And so I think people kind of know that. If you feel like you have so many ideas, you don't know which ones are good, you don't know when to play what that might be the time that you actually need to stop and compose something and write it down and study what your ideas are. I think that's a great exercise for all of us. Take some time, listen to these chords slowly, play the ideas that come out, do it until you find something you love, and then record it. Yeah, that's my challenge.
I love it. Yeah, and I think for everybody to cue in to your challenge, Aimee, is this idea of experimenting, like allowing yourself to experiment with ideas, right? So many times there's so much pressure. We got to play great stuff. We got to create musical ideas right now. Go fast, do it. Mm-hmm. I love the idea of thinking about the practice room like a laboratory. We can slow things down. We can chop it up. We can put a little bit of this in there and put a little bit of that in there. And if that doesn't work, we try something else. That's great. I love that so much. So for everybody today, the challenge is to take a jazz standard, maybe just the first 8 bars, and just see how many ideas you can come up with, developing off of each other. I loved in one of the lines you played, I forgot what the melodic line was, but you were like do 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 da 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 da, building up, and then that the A flat major 7, you played something that would just kind of descended a little bit. So that was kind of the surprise there for me. It was like, oh, I think I know where she's going up. She went down a little bit and changed it a little bit and resolved it. Love that. Great.
It's funny how often that happens in the 4th bar. or the 8/4. It's kind of a time to resolve or to change it up. Yeah.
Well, yeah. I mean, sometimes the composition feels like it calls for it sometimes, right? So yeah, that's so fantastic. Well, Aimee, thanks for all this information. This has been really wonderful. And we'll have the links to your video that's based on this and other links today in the show notes, learnjazzstandards.com/episode 162. But I do want to talk about your new album coming out. Excited about this. Why don't you tell everybody what it is, what's going on, when it's coming out, and get us amped up about it.
Thanks, Brett. I'm amped up about it. It's called Looking for the Answers, and it was released for pre-order on iTunes and Amazon just on March 15th. And just a few more weeks left until it's totally released. That'll be on April 12th. But it's 11 tracks. 7 of them are originals. You've already heard 2. I think the Loveliest Girl and Falling Snow are the singles that I released. And with everybody's help on the YouTube channel by, purchasing the singles, they actually made it to number 9 and 13 on the iTunes jazz charts.
All right.
So that was exciting for me. And then there are also some fun surprises. I was able to get John Clayton to play on one track. We do a duet of Bye Bye Blackbird together. Just bass and vocals. And gosh, I've never had such a freeing experience as I had in the studio with John Clayton. One take and 4 improvised choruses of Bye Bye Blackbird with the head and the head out. So 6 choruses actually, but we, I don't know, it felt like a crazy dance for those 4 choruses improvising with him. So that's a fun kind of twist in the middle of the lineup. I also play a couple of duets with my guitar player, Mike, and we play All Too Soon, the Duke Ellington tune, and So in Love by Cole Porter. And I did some things on this album that I haven't done before. I arranged for woodwind, sometimes sextet, as many as 6 horns with bass clarinet and alto flute and flute. That was really fun for me. I also played some synths, and I also allowed myself to take some of the songs that had been stewing around in my brain for a really long time that are so simple and might have even been pop songs, and then stretch to see what I could do with them. There's even a song where I decided to add effects, and all of the effects are done with my voice, with overtone singing and some funny noises I can make that we EQ'd to sound like just soundscapes. So for me, it was just really, the cover of the CD is me. It looks like I'm on some unknown planet with a shovel digging. And I don't even have a helmet on. My helmet's lying next to me. And I saw
that. I was like, that looks like space, and it looks like you'd be dead, but you're not, because it's music. You're still alive.
Yeah. So it felt like once I let myself be explorative, that I didn't even need the helmet anymore. Like I found a new way to breathe or something. So,
I like that. That's cool. Nice. Well, I certainly have pre-ordered it. And hey, everybody listening today, let's get Aimee to number 1. Let's get Aimee to number 1 on the jazz charts. That would be sick.
Thank you, Brent. I appreciate that.
Where can everybody find this? Where do they go to get this?
iTunes is the best way. If you go to your iTunes app and search for my name, it should come up right away, Looking for the Answers. And if you do pre-order, you actually get what they call an instant gratification track. So the title track, Looking for the Answers, will become available for you to listen to right away. Also, you can go to my website, aimeenolte.com, under the Recordings tab. And if you look there, and on my website, there are 30-second samples of every single track, along with the lyrics to the song. So you can get to know the album in this space before it's officially released there on my website.
Fantastic. Again, we'll have all this in the show notes today. This is really exciting. I'm a fan, and this is a great accomplishment. So congratulations on the new album. Whether you pre-order it or whether it's out right now, you are going to want to get involved in this for sure. Aimee, thank you so much for being on the show today, for sharing your expertise, for taking the time to just lay down some value for my audience today. Really do appreciate it. And you know what? I'm going to make a pledge right now to not make it another 100 episodes before we have you back on. How about that?
That sounds good. Thank you so much for having me and for being so fun to hang out with and for asking really good questions.
All right, that's all for today's show. Again, a big thanks to Aimee Nolte. Man, she's a great musician. I'm definitely inspired by her. I know that you are too. I know that you learned something from this episode today. I know that you're going to take action on today's episode on Aimee's challenge. And of course, I hope you do check out her new album as well. And hey, by the way, you know it's coming. If you got value today's show, make sure that you go to iTunes or wherever you listen to podcasts and leave a 5-star rating and review. Just let other people know why you love this show, why it's a great show, and how it's helped you. And that just helps promote the show, just helps other people know it's a show worth listening to. So thanks in advance for doing that. And of course, if you're not subscribed to the show, make sure you're subscribed, because we have lots of other great guests coming up, people 10 times smarter than me, people that have other skills than me. And then, of course, I'm going to be laying down a lot of great solo episodes for you, jazz lessons, tips, advice, as I do every single week. So stay tuned for all that, and I look forward to seeing you in the next episode. Cheers.
Thanks for listening to the LJS podcast, brought to you by LearnJazzStandards.com. Subscribe to the series on iTunes, and don't forget to join our jazz community at LearnJazzStandards.com/newsletter.